Welcome to this explainer. Okay, so today we're stepping right into a world that is, quite honestly, suffocatingly bleak. We aren't just exploring a physical space here. We're really diving into the profound, crushing psychological weight of living under absolute totalitarianism. We're unpacking the second chapter of this deeply haunting narrative, and it literally asks us to feel the sheer emotional exhaustion of existing in a society where even your most private thoughts are a battlefield. So I want you to really lean in and feel the texture of this reality with me, because it is as devastating as it is meticulously designed.
Thought crime does not entail death. Thought crime is death. Just let that sink in for a second. This isn't just a harsh rule. It's the chilling fatalism that defines our protagonist, Winston's entire existence. He has just written in his diary, which is an act of sheer unthinkable rebellion, and in doing so, he instantly recognizes himself as already a dead man. The psychological terror here is just absolute. The very second you formulate a forbidden thought, the end is already written into the act itself. No trial, no going back. And what's so striking is how this internal psychological decay is perfectly mirrored in the physical world he's forced to inhabit. Imagine just walking into Victory Mansions. Built way back in the 1930s, these flats are, quite literally, falling to pieces. The plaster is constantly flaking down from the ceilings. The pipes burst every single winter like clockwork. And permeating through all of it is this inescapable, dreary smell of boiled cabbage mixed with a sharp reek of sweat. It's a complete sensory nightmare. Everything is broken, and just trying to get a simple amateur repair done is this exhausting, almost daily irritation.
Which naturally brings us to a knock at the door, and we meet Mrs. Parsons, a neighbor. She speaks in this dreary, whining voice, basically asking for help with a blocked sink. But what I really want you to focus on here is the deep, emotional toll that is literally etched into her very being. She's only about 30 years old, but she looks so much older. We're given this heartbreaking, incredibly empathetic detail. The narrator says, one had the impression that there was dust in the creases of her face. She's just a colorless, completely crushed-looking woman. She perfectly embodies the quiet, grinding despair of the women in this society, utterly depleted and living in a constant, unyielding state of nervous apprehension.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the horrific contrast at play in the society. Think about a traditional childhood for a moment. We naturally associate it with innocence, playfulness, safety, right? Well, in Oceania, childhood has been entirely weaponized by the state. The youth are organized into these militaristic groups called the spies. They drill with dummy rifles, they scream political slogans, and they literally clamor and beg their parents to take them to see prisoners being hanged in the park. Can you even imagine? Try to imagine the absolute gut-wrenching dread of a parent living in a world where your own children are literally conditioned to be predators.
So, when Winston actually steps into the Parsons flat to fix that sink, he is immediately ambushed by this new, terrifying breed of child. A handsome, tough-looking 9-year-old boy in his blue shorts and red neckerchief suddenly pops up, violently menacing Winston with a toy automatic pistol. He yells, "You're a traitor, you're a thought criminal, I'll shoot you, I'll vaporize you." And sure, it's framed as a game, but there is a vicious, calculating ferocity in this kid's eye. It's terrifying. Honestly, it's like watching tiger cubs playfully gambling about knowing full well they are going to quickly grow up into actual man-eaters.
And the threat isn't just verbal either. As Winston is leaving, after clearing this incredibly disgusting clod of human hair out of the sink, the mundane, everyday reality of doing neighborly chores is suddenly pierced by real violence. He takes this agonizingly painful blow right to the back of his neck, feeling exactly like a red-hot wire jabbing into him. The boy actually hit him with a catapult. But as Winston spins around, what strikes him the most isn't the physical pain at all. It's the look of absolute, helpless fright on Mrs. Parsons' grayish face as she desperately drags her son back inside. She is completely terrified of her own offspring.
Because you see, this isn't just an unruly kid acting out. This is completely systemic. Winston reflects that nearly all children nowadays are just horrible. The state systematically transforms them into ungovernable little savages, and yet they entirely adore the party. All their ferocity is turned purely outwards against enemies of the state. It's gotten to the point where it's practically normal for people over 30 to be terrified of their own children, and with incredibly good reason. Hardly a week passes without the newspaper celebrating some so-called child hero, basically an eavesdropping little sneak who overheard a compromising remark and denounced their own parents straight to the thought police. It is a life of unending domestic terror.
In the absolute thick of all this overwhelming paranoia, Winston's mind desperately grasps for an anchor. He remembers this dream from 7 years ago. He was walking through a pitch-dark room, and a voice, which he later identified as an inter-party member named O'Brien, said quietly, "We shall meet in the place where there is no darkness." It's just such a haunting line. Winston doesn't even know for sure if O'Brien is a friend or an enemy, but in a world completely, utterly devoid of trust, those words form a mysterious link of understanding. A tiny, fragile thread of human connection left in the dark.
But of course, the harsh reality of Oceania never actually lets you escape for long. The telescreen, which remember, never ever turns off, suddenly blasts this clear, beautiful trumpet call, followed by a triumphant announcement of some glorious military victory in South India. But Winston knows better. Bad news is always coming. And sure enough, right after the gory, hyped-up details of the enemy's annihilation comes the real news. The chocolate ration is being reduced from 30 grams down to 20. And then, bam, the telescreen immediately crashes into rousing military music, purely to drown out the grim, frustrating reality that everyone is getting less food. It's such a dark, bitter irony.
And you can literally never escape that voice. As Winston looks out the window, he feels the suffocating, omnipresent nature of the party pressing in on him. The eyes of Big Brother pursue you everywhere, from coins, stamps, book covers, posters. It's always those eyes watching you, and the voice from the telescreen constantly enveloping you. Asleep or awake, working or eating, indoors or out, there is zero escape. The absolute most terrifying truth of this existence boils down to this. Nothing is truly your own except the few cubic centimeters inside your scub.
And this brilliantly illustrates the mental cage they are trapped in. These three sacred principles form the very bars of that cage. Ingsoc slogans are inescapable. They're inscribed on the enormous, impenetrable Ministry of Truth building, and they're even stamped on the tiny 25-cent coin sitting in Winston's pocket. War is peace. Freedom is slavery. Ignorance is strength. These slogans fundamentally demand that you reject your own basic senses and logic. They are perfectly designed to completely break down your perception of reality itself, ensuring that the dominion of the party might endure forever.
Yet, despite knowing the absolute futility of his actions, the chiming of a clock puts a strange new heart into Winston. He goes back to the table and writes this dedication in his diary. From the age of uniformity, from the age of solitude, from the age of Big Brother, greetings. He fully realizes that he is essentially a lonely ghost, uttering a truth nobody will ever hear. But the crucial point is this. By staying sane and simply uttering the truth, even if it's just to a hidden piece of paper, he is carrying on the human heritage. The continuity is not broken. Let's move to and see how this builds, because this crushing realization suddenly breeds desperate survival instincts. Now that he has recognized himself as a dead man, it paradoxically becomes vital to stay alive for as long as possible. So he meticulously covers his tracks. He scrubs his ink-stained fingers with this gritty, dark brown soap that rasps the skin like sandpaper. He places the diary back in a drawer. Knowing a hair placed across the page is way too obvious a trap, he instead carefully places a single identifiable grain of whitish dust right on the corner of the cover. It's a heartbreakingly practical, desperately paranoid, yet ultimately futile attempt to monitor if the thought police have discovered his secret.
And that leads us to this final, truly devastating thought directly from Winston's mind. He knows, for a fact, the diary will eventually be reduced to ashes, and he himself will be vaporized, wiped completely out of existence and out of memory. So how could you make an appeal to the future when not a trace of you, not even an anonymous word scribbled on a piece of paper, could physically survive? It leaves us grappling with the absolute chilling devastation of totalitarian annihilation, a reality where even the very echoes of your suffering are permanently erased. Something to think about, right?